I want to get right into it. How did you guys get involved with BUMP?
Hello, I'm Priya. I'm the creative manager of BUMP. I started with BUMP a few years ago on the mural side of things, and it kind of began when I touched another public art project in Chinatown, the Guide and Protector mural, which was a really intense public art project, and it kind of taught me really quickly the power of public art, how public art is a bit of a portal, how it kind of like lifts a mirror up to a city to tell you what it's ready for. So from there, it kind of made me really interested in how public art works in Calgary, and I started exploring a year later at BUMP Festival. There was an opening and I leaped into it.
How do you think BUMP Festival influences Calgary as a city and as, like the culture within it?
So BUMP Festival is like two things at once. Like on one half of BUMP Festival, we're programming murals. So like public art from local artists, national artists, international artists, right? Like large scale public art pieces in the form of murals throughout the city. The other half of BUMP, it's arts and culture programming. So like outdoor shows, concert, this year a conference. So there is this incredible power that a festival like BUMP has, because we are creating things that the public kind of has to meet without a choice, which is what public art is in a lot of ways. You don't get to go into a gallery and choose to see a piece of art. The art is right in front of you. You have to interact and interface with it every day, especially like on the Beltline, which is the heart of Calgary. So BUMP has this way of stirring up and creating dialogue and conversations to the public, kind of in an immediate, instant way. And we do it through predominantly the artists that we bring here, who are, very unique. We have like a really rigorous kind of programming way of doing things, which like Anna can speak to more because that's really her department. Yeah.
Yeah, let's jump into that.
Yeah,
like,
let's jump into how we do it.
Can I speak to that more? Yeah.
How do we, like, how does it all work? Because like, I mean, like just this year, like over 800 people applied to paint as an artist in
But
BUMP
that's what I'm
Festival
confused
this year.
about. It's like, are we choosing things that are culturally appropriate for the city? Are we choosing it based on the artist? Like, how do we go about who gets chosen for each mural?
Yeah, so we have like a jury, which is made up of a pretty diverse group of people. So we have like educators, curators, just general members of the public, and artists themselves. We had 6 folks on our jury this year, and they are tasked with the very big job of going through that full list of all those applications. So they look at every single portfolio and kind of like based on their personal tastes and experience and judgment, choose who they think would make the best art for the city right now. So we ended up with 13 artists this year out of that list of 800. So it's like highly competitive.
Is there like a criteria that we have to meet to be able to know how these 13 people are chosen?
I think every year, like us as like organizers of the festival, look at Calgary, we look at muralism, we look at we think about, in a way like, what does the city need? What does the city lack? And those questions are asked not just towards artists, but also programming, right? Like, what type of performers are going to be in the festival this year? What type of events do we want to have? So like those conversations internally steer us towards some overarching themes, I'd say, right? Like last year's theme for BUMP was play. So thinking about that word in every facet of BUMP Festival. So this year, like there was a lot of conversations around like knowledge sharing, intention, electric, a kind of like, we're an ambitious festival. Let's like punch way above our weight this year, right? So that goes into the conversations we have with our jury, and even the jury we choose, right? Like even in a way, like we are curating the jury and the jury curates the artists. So the jury's tastes play a part as well. So if you have a jury that's very like, there's a lot of graffiti artists sitting on that jury, you're probably going to see way more graffiti art in the city that year. If you have a jury that, I don't know, like the people on the jury, like their tastes and the community they advocate for really shows up in which artists are programmed.
The jury changes every year, or is it the same jury every time?
We switch it up every year. There's like some folks that have sat on multiple juries, multiple couple years in a row, but this year it was pretty new.
Yeah, we don't publicize our jury only because there's so many artists who could then approach jury members and be like, why was I not picked? You know what I mean? Like if you have 800 artists emailing you, it's a lot of like pressure. It's a lot of smoke. So we don't necessarily publicize our jury, even though like jury members are allowed to be like, I'm on the bump jury. But like the jury is meant to ensure that there's like a really strong system where people can advocate for different communities. People can catch the artists who are falling through the cracks. So like there are certain artists who may not be very awesome at putting an application together. But if you have a jury member who's in the community, they're like, I know that artist, I've experience with that artist, and they can kind of speak for them in the process of us reviewing applications. That's really important. You want a jury that can do that, a jury who has, but also a jury who's experienced in like muralism, right? Like someone who can look at an application and be like, oh, this person's application might not be like beautiful, but I can tell they're an excellent public artist, you know? So having a rounded voices in the room will bring the best festival.
Right. We're also trying to make it as democratic as possible. Like we don't want it to just be the three of us sitting in a room saying like, we like this artist, this artist, this artist.
Yeah.
They're going to paint all the public art in the city.
Yeah.
We want to have as many people like deciding what goes up as possible.
So like beyond you three and beyond the board that you guys have, does like the community have a say or any type of involvement on who gets chosen or what is put on the walls?
Cut the mic. I'm kidding.
Not really, which I think is kind of unique to Bump. Because we're painting on a lot of private buildings and private property, we don't actually do a huge amount of community engagement. Like a lot of other public art projects require you to do tons of surveys and like gather feedback. We occasionally do that, but it's not like built into our process. So ultimately it's up to the building owners to decide if they want the art on their wall or not.
So what makes the conference unique? Like why do me as someone that's just coming as a guest, what am I going to expect to see there? Or someone that's actually an artist or a muralist or someone that is more involved in it? What, how can you speak to that?
That's a great question.
Okay, the thing is, right, on one hand, if you look at Bump Festival, we've at this point programmed over 300 like public art installations in 8 years, right? And of that, like upwards of like 120 are just murals, which is the scale of that. And if you think about one organization sitting on that much experience and knowledge, there's no other organization in Calgary that can speak towards public art at the scale that we can, quite honestly, right? It's like these are massive budget projects, and we're touching artists locally, major artists across Canada, and then also like really big artists from across the world are coming here and changing the landscape of the city through their art. So like what that does for us as a festival is the knowledge sharing component. Like we've been synthesizing experience and knowledge for 8 years, that now we're like, okay, let's like reformulate all of our experiences and put it into a format that people can learn from and be excited by. We can share, we can kind of create a space for dialogue and ideas to buzz around. That's one part of the conference. The other part of it is we're a festival that, interestingly enough, isn't really beholden to any other organization. We have the ability to create space to have really interesting, sometimes radical conversations around public art that maybe other organizations in Calgary and Canada can't. So at our conference, you can expect to see speakers having very authentic conversations around public art, graffiti, revolutionary art, what isn't allowed in art, like how is Canada even going to change, right? So that has been very interesting to realize about ourselves, that it's like, oh, we can actually bring to the table really charged voices to have really conversations around art that maybe a lot of other organizations can't because of maybe how their hands are tied.
What makes Bump Festival different from all the other festivals? I've seen a festival in Toronto, I'm not sure the name of it, but I've seen the one in Montreal as well. Like, what makes you guys different? What makes you guys stand out?
I feel like Calgary in and of itself is a different ecosystem, and I think something that you will know if you come to the conference is kind of the uniqueness of like all the people that are involved in our festival, whether it's us, like we're pretty weird and kind of crazy and neurotic, and the rest of our team is like composed of like incredible, talented, competent people as well. But outside of that kind of like core team that's very like willing to roll with the punches, that's very creative, the arts ecosystem in Calgary is like really interesting and young right now. Like there's a lot of like emerging artists and also like established artists who are doing interesting things, whether it's just in the city or elsewhere. Like, and we really have a diversity of like all ranges of artists who are like at different points in their career. And so I think like for Calgary, something that we've been able to see over time is like the development of Calgary's like baseline of artists has very much like risen, whether it's like in fine art or in public art. Like Calgary in and of itself has a very strong like artistic personality in certain ways, and I think that you don't have the ability to kind of verbalize it, but you really have to see it. And the other thing is like we're always comparing ourselves to like Toronto, Montreal, even Vancouver, and it's kind of like the vibe is so different. Like in Montreal and Toronto, for instance, like the graffiti that is around is kind of something that people take for granted, but like for us to get any graffiti programming here, it's like so obstinate, like, and people are so like anti-graffiti, but it's like something that we'd love to do is kind of, you know, push that niche of art forward, not just graffiti art, but like there's different things that make Calgary very unique, and I think that in order to see it, you have to interact with it, and you have to like reckon with it and go to programming and stuff like that. So
We're also a festival that like, while talking about like Toronto and Montreal and like what makes Bump Festival unique, I'd say we're a festival that's actively trying to tell a story, a new story about their city. I think like we're a festival trying to shape the identity of Calgary in the future, right? Whereas other big cities, it's like those are awesome. Other big cities are great, but like so much of their story is like set in stone, and sometimes it feels like the artists in that city have to kind of like meet the city's story, whereas we are a festival trying to make room for innovators in art to tell a new story. So like we're very like future forward, right? Like sometimes it feels like we're trying to move a lot of people into the future through our festival programming and the artists we bring in, what we can and cannot do. That I think is really exciting to be a festival on that tipping point of a city.
That being said, what kind of cultural shifts do you guys hope Bump pushes forward?
Our events programming this year is like really forward thinking. Like the conference is one thing, but like our like Trinity Kiki Ball and Rave is like, you know, it's like already feeling like historic with just like the programming announcement.
yeah, I think like there's some like organizationally unique things about us too. Like for instance, we're filming at High Park, and it's a project of the Beltline Neighborhoods Association, and so is Bump technically. Like a lot of the other organizations are kind of like a standalone. It started as a festival and now they move into consulting. So organizationally, we're quite different. I think like from the programming side, like we've kind of kept things always changing. And then from the event side, like, yeah, I mean, as long as I've been in Bump, like I've tried to kind of make programming from the event side that I would like to go to. Like queer and people of color are like the core of my community, and I really want to kind of like see that more in Calgary. Because obviously like Calgary's a very diverse city. Like growing up here, huge Vietnamese community, huge Chinese community, specific Chinese communities like people from Hong Kong and stuff like that. There's a huge Filipino community. I think seeing different parts of Calgary represented in our festival, whether it's muralism or events, synthesizing that in a way that's exciting and not just kind of like lip service, like, hey, we're gonna have like a Chinese themed party, but really like what is gonna draw young people of all sorts to our programming. I approach the events, and I think in different ways is how we approach like programming in general, from our open calls and making things more accessible to kind of like making sure that like our organizational processes are like equitable and we have accountability baked into everything.
Are you guys excited about anything specific about 2024? Could be event-wise, could be artists.
I am very, very excited about our festival closing party, the Kiki Ball and Rave. I think our lineup is really, really, really awesome. It's an all-black electronic DJ lineup, coming from, you know, like Toronto, New York. Like, it's a pretty wild lineup. Having it being led by an artist like Mike Q for the queer community, for the ballroom community, like that's crazy to bring someone like Mike Q here, right? Like, we're talking about an artist who Beyonce is sampling in her music, right? Like, it's like a really, really like revolutionary artist in electronic music. So to bring someone like that here, and then to have before that Kiki Ball that's public, that's accessible, that you have like legends flying in from all over Canada, it just feels like we are on a big cultural moment, and it's really exciting to see Bump Festival like driving the moment. Are there any artists that you're really excited to see, to bring to Calgary this year?
Yes. One I'm really excited for is Meso, who is a Paris-based street artist. He does like primarily graffiti work. So he's going to be repainting a mural site that we actually painted in 2019 that's been tagged really heavily since then, unfortunately. So we're hoping that bringing in like quite an established, well-known, respected graffiti writer will kind of revitalize that area, potentially deter more people from like tagging the work, but also like really brighten up the space. So I'm really excited to see him. And also, like, we have amazing local artists this year. Like, it's actually, yeah, even like for me, unexpected to see like how many talented individuals are working in Calgary as muralists.
And like the festival creates a space where all these artists are painting kind of in this 2-week zone. So in tandem to their painting, we have these events that they are all coming and hanging out at, like the High Park Party, the ball, the conference, like artist hangouts, right? Like we're creating spaces for these artists to paint and then meet each other and expand their network. And I think that's really the benefit to an artist at a festival, is like you can connect a local artist who's doing incredible things here to an artist who's flying in from Berlin, to an artist who's in Montreal, so that next year or years from now, you will see a Calgary artist going and painting a mural in Berlin, right? Like, that's the dream.
We've already like seen success with that. Like this year we're bringing back Michelle and Wenting as a duo. They're painting under the name Earbugs.
And they met at our festival.
They met at our festival. Michelle, it was her first public art piece, I believe. She painted a really tiny wall and met Wenting, who painted a larger wall, and they connected 2 years ago, and now they've been juried in again, and they're doing a collaboration. So it's like those kind of connections are, I think, what makes the festival like really
awesome, and builds an industry, right? Like, that's kind of the thing, is like
It's beyond just
the festival.
creating art.
Yeah, it's like, what is the public art industry? Who are the players? And who, like, because these artists are the ones that are going to kind of be those public art voices for the next 2 decades in Canada, right? And like many times, like, it's really awesome that we can be part of like the beginnings of their story, to be like 20 years from now, it's going to be amazing when we're like, oh, you know, we have a Katie Green piece, right? Like, we have a piece from Wenting from Toronto. We have a piece from like Meso from Paris, right? Like already we have like just insane muralists coming here and painting. I think if people really do like dig into it and look at who has touched Calgary's walls, they'll be like, wait, what? Like all these people were here. right? Like, we have the tallest mural in the world
Which is
through
crazy,
BUMP,
yeah.
right? Like, so it's like the festival is just like growing and growing and stacking up every year.
How do people find out about BUMP if they don't already know about it?
Our Instagram, YYC BUMP, our website, yycbump.ca. Sign up to our newsletter. Everything is really online. Instagram is really like where like all of our announcements are happening. All of our events are free and accessible, which is like every single one is free. With the conference, you'll have to register to participate or like to be a part of it, just because, you know, it's like inside, we're having it at Platform Calgary, so there's like limited capacity. But everything else, yeah, like it's all free. It's meant for the public. The more people that know about it, the more people that come, the better the festival is going to be.
I know you guys heard that. It's free, so you got no excuse. All right, well, thank you guys for being on. Hope to chat to you guys again soon. And if you didn't like that, better luck next time.